This is something we didn't do the first time we taught the course. And it became more and more important for me to do. Because they come, 80% believe that the news media, we give them a survey the very first day, has strong political biases. And by the way, they reflect their parents. They don't understand what bias means. We have a big discussion about what fairness is, what's bias, how do you spot bias in the news media, how would you know if there was bias, and we do a lot. But then there's the audience bias. They bring tremendous biases as news consumers, and they have to recognize that. And so I don't know how many of you are familiar with this study, and it's a little scary, but 2 years ago, researchers in the Mideast decided to show 6 clips of the war in Lebanon in 1982. So these clips were vetted, they're 25, 30 years old, and they showed them to 144 Palestinians and 144 Israelis. And they said, count the number of positive references to Israel when you watch these news clips. So what do you think happened? What do you think happened? What would you expect happened? Palestinians are watching them, the Israelis watching them. So the Palestinians see all of these positive references to Israel, and Israel sees just the opposite. Same consumers watching the same reality, but here's the scary part. Then they decide to test this only with the people who have the most knowledge about the story. They do a test. People have the most knowledge about the war, and they're the most educated. And they test them again, and what happens to their bias? It goes up. It goes up. Education is no inoculation against bias if you're a partisan. We all know people who are so smart, right? You can't tell them anything. It's harder to change their mind. And so we really make the students understand the danger of them not recognizing their own bias. We have brought our colleagues in the psychology department at the university into this course to give us their best course material on cognitive dissonance, which is on the idea that we are fighting our evolutionary history to be good news consumers. Because there's an evolutionary advantage in me wanting to believe what I already believe. But that's not what you can do as a good news consumer. I don't want information that just confirms my bias. And this is scary. Within 72 hours, I forget and disassociate where I got the information. And we used the election to great advantage last semester, give them political advertising. John McCain, Obama. People 72 hours later will forget if that information comes from an ad or from a news story. And in fact, just even worse, people who want to believe things will say it came from a reliable source, and they won't even remember where they got it. And somehow our students have to overcome that, and we give them a lot of ways and exercise and practice to try to recognize their own bias, analytical tools. Every time they're emotional about a story, turn on the critical thinking part of their brain. And you know, scientists are now wiring people, and they're testing them, and they're finding out when they get information they don't like, only the emotional part of their brain goes on. 20 minutes, the critical thinking part of the brain never turns on. It has to turn on. One of the things we do as an exercise, and this is, do we have Project Implicit, John? It comes up? Okay, so I'm going to give you a test, okay? So we give the students this as part of this exercise. You got to answer this question. What do most college girls do on spring break, okay? Not what you do. I know. So answer the question, okay? Everybody believes they sleep. Everybody really believes college women sleep. I don't really believe this. I don't believe your answers. Okay. So most of the students say, well, you know, the college girls, they all drink, binge drink. They go to Florida. They have unsafe sex. Okay? A majority of the students say that. We have to go on, right, John? Okay. And in fact, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation did a study of what college women do on spring break. And they found an alarming number binge drink and have unsafe sex. And every news organization in America picked up that story and ran with it. Here's a picture, okay? There was only one problem. About 4 days after the story ran, 2 researchers at the University of Chicago came forward and said that they looked at the study. It had 0-degree validity. 0. It was a self-selected internet study in which 64% of the women who responded had never been on spring break. And the students say to me, we show them, how does this get in the press? How does it get in the press, and how as news consumers we're supposed to know this? And I tell them two things. It gets into the press, by the way, because editors have the same problem as news consumers. They believe what they want to believe. If I'm the editor of Newsday, I'm the city editor, and somebody comes to me and says, 80% of women on spring break meditate in convents, I'm going to say, who did that study? What's that all about? They come and tell me this, I already believe it. The bar is lower. I don't apply critical scrutiny. And then we have the head of our research survey center come in and tell the students, here are 6 questions you should look for the answers to in every story you ever read about a poll or a survey before you believe it. And she goes through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we arm the students with that kind of information. This, by the way, is one of my favorite assignments. If you have not done this, make a note to yourself right now. When you go back, okay, I want you to go to this site, Project Implicit, run by Harvard and 2 other universities. This site tests your own biases. You will take a test, and these researchers will tell you if you harbor an implicit bias. Gender, race, fat versus skinny, old versus young. And you will read about their research, and we have all of our students do this, to try to raise their level of awareness about their own potential biases that they bring. I think this is one of the greatest hurdles news consumers have to overcome. We got to work on it. And here's the lesson that we pound away. And we have to give them specific practical tools to do this. Be open to information that challenges your own biases and assumptions, or you will never be a good news consumer. You will only get information for the rest of your life that confirms what you already want to believe.